Sometimes, the hardest battles aren't fought on foreign soil. They're fought right here, in the heart. After 12 years of war, a Marine named Jack came home to Montana hoping for peace, not glory. But when he and his loyal German shepherd, Rex, uncover a hidden smuggling camp in the forest, fate gives them one last mission. A mission that will test his courage, his faith, and the quiet strength of a man who just wanted to live in peace. What happens when a soldier, tired of fighting, is forced to become a hero once more? Stay with us to the end, because what Jack discovers will remind you that miracles still exist, and faith can heal even the deepest scars. If you believe loyalty and love can still change the world, please subscribe, share this story, and comment your thoughts below. May God bless everyone watching this video. The morning mist hung low over the mountains of western Montana, where pine trees stood tall like silent guardians, and the air smelled of wet earth and cedar. It was early autumn, and the sky carried that pale silver hue of the season's first cold front. A soft drizzle had fallen overnight, leaving a sheen of dew on the wooden porch of a small cabin by Clearwater Lake. Inside that cabin lived Jack Miller, a man in his late 30s with a weathered face carved by time and memory. His eyes were steel blue, sharp but tired, the kind that had seen too much and trusted too little. His jawline was strong, often hidden under a short, rough beard that gave him the look of someone who'd rather blend into the wilderness than stand out in a crowd. He wore a flannel shirt rolled up at the sleeves, revealing arms lined with scars, small mementos from wars fought far away. Jack had been a U.S. Marine for 12 long years, a man who led teams through the deserts of Afghanistan. Those years had shaped him into a quiet, calculated soul, loyal, disciplined, but carrying invisible wounds no doctor could heal. Outside, his companion stirred, Rex, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a coat of deep sable, black and tan. His ears perked at every sound. His amber eyes were alert yet gentle. Rex was more than just a dog. He was Jack's shadow, his brother in arms. The two had saved each other more times than they could count. Rex bore a faint scar across his right hind leg, a reminder of the roadside explosion that had nearly taken both their lives 2 years ago. Even in retirement, Rex remained watchful, pacing along the porch each morning as if guarding an invisible perimeter. Jack stepped outside with a cup of steaming black coffee, his breath visible in the crisp air. The lake mirrored the overcast sky, calm and endless. He took a deep breath, savoring the silence, a silence that wasn't broken by gunfire or radio chatter. Yet behind that peace, his mind carried the weight of 1,000 echoes. Some nights, he woke in a cold sweat, hand reaching instinctively for a rifle that was no longer there. Other nights, he would hear Rex whimper softly, caught in his own memories of the battlefield. The two of them shared those ghosts in quiet understanding. One man, one dog, both veterans of a world that never truly let go. After breakfast, Jack loaded his old pickup truck, an aging Ford F-150 with faded green paint and dents that told stories of long, rugged miles. He drove down to Thompson's General Store, a small-town shop run by Earl Thompson, a short, stout man in his 60s with kind eyes and a thick gray mustache that twitched whenever he smiled. Earl had been running the store for 3 decades, serving everyone from loggers to hunters. "Morning, Jack," Earl greeted, his voice gravelly but warm. "Coffee's on the house. You still settling in?" Jack nodded with a faint smile, leaning on the counter. "Trying to," he said. "The quiet takes some getting used to." Earl chuckled. "That's a good problem to have. You've earned it, son." They talked briefly about fishing, weather, and the rumors of a new highway being built nearby. Small town talk. Before leaving, Jack picked up a new collar for Rex and a bag of feed. On his way out, Earl called after him. "You ever need a hand, you know where to find me." Jack gave a polite wave, the kind of gesture that said thanks, but also meant he'd probably never ask. The afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting golden streaks over the lake as Jack and Rex hiked up a nearby ridge. The forest was dense, alive with the smell of pine needles and distant rain. Jack often came here to clear his mind, to remind himself that life didn't have to be chaos. Rex trotted ahead, tail high, occasionally turning to make sure Jack was following. They stopped by a fallen tree where Jack sat, tossing a stick into the water. Rex dove after it with a bark that echoed across the stillness. Jack smiled faintly, that rare, fleeting kind of smile that came only when he forgot who he used to be. As evening approached, the temperature dropped quickly. The horizon burned orange before fading into the deep blue of twilight. Jack gathered firewood, his hands steady and deliberate, movements born from years of discipline. Inside the cabin, the crackling of the fireplace filled the silence. Rex lay by the fire, head resting on his paws, eyes half closed. Jack picked up an old photograph from the mantel, a picture of him in uniform, standing with 3 other Marines, and Rex sitting proudly at his feet. 2 of those men were gone now. His jaw tightened. "We made it out, buddy," he whispered to Rex. "That's gotta mean something." Later that night, as the wind whispered against the window panes, Jack drifted into sleep. The dream came again. The blinding flash, the explosion, the ringing in his ears, the shouting. He woke with a jolt, heart pounding, sweat beading on his forehead. Rex was already beside him, pressing his muzzle against Jack's arm, grounding him back to the present. Jack stroked the dog's head slowly, whispering, "It's over. It's all over." But deep down, he knew it wasn't. The battlefield might have been thousands of miles away, yet parts of it still lived inside him. Outside, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, blanketing the forest in white silence. Jack stood at the window, watching the snow swirl under the moonlight. In that quiet moment, the world seemed still, almost sacred. He took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "Maybe peace isn't something you find out there. Maybe it's something you fight for right here." Behind him, Rex gave a soft bark, as if agreeing. The night grew colder, the fire burned lower, and the 2 veterans, 1 man and 1 dog, drifted back into uneasy sleep, waiting for whatever tomorrow might bring. The next morning, the snow from the night before had melted into a damp mist that hung over the trees. Jack and Rex set out for their usual walk, boots crunching over frost-coated leaves, the dog's breath rising in faint clouds. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of stillness that made instincts sharpen. Rex's ears twitched, his nose lifted to the air. Jack noticed it too, a faint hum, mechanical, close but hidden. He crouched, signaling Rex to stay low. Through the thick pines, a gray pickup truck sat idling on an old logging trail, its rear doors half open. 2 men stood near it, rough-looking, both wearing camouflage jackets with no insignia. One was tall and wiry, his beard patchy and eyes restless, constantly scanning the trees. The other was heavier, bald, smoking a cigarette while loading small crates stamped with foreign markings into the truck bed. The smell of gun oil drifted faintly in the air. Jack's jaw clenched. His soldier's instincts returned instantly. He watched for a minute longer before quietly retreating, Rex following with silent steps. Back at the cabin, Jack sat at his kitchen table thinking. He didn't want to get involved. Trouble had a way of finding him, and this felt like the kind that never ended well. But something about those men, their precision, their discipline, told him this wasn't just a couple of hunters. He picked up his phone, stared at it for a while, then put it down. Instead, he loaded his rifle and sat by the window as dusk fell, the forest outside dark and heavy with secrets. That night, headlights cut through the mist outside his cabin. Rex growled low until Jack opened the door. Standing there was Officer Linda Carter, wearing a dark sheriff's jacket over jeans and boots caked with mud. She was in her mid-30s, tall and lean, with shoulder-length auburn hair tied loosely at the back. Her face was striking, sharp cheekbones softened by tired green eyes that had seen too many late shifts. Linda had grown up in the same town as Jack. They'd gone to high school together before life had taken them down different roads. She'd joined law enforcement straight out of college, known for her grit and calm under pressure. Jack remembered hearing that she'd once been shot during a drug bust 2 years ago, but refused to leave the force. That scar, faint but visible just under her collarbone, had changed her, made her quieter, harder around the edges. "Evening, Jack," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. The smell of pine and coffee filled the cabin. "Sorry to drop in unannounced, but I think we need to talk." Jack crossed his arms. "About what?" She exhaled slowly, taking off her hat. "You were seen near the logging trail this morning. Don't worry, no one's accusing you of anything. But we've been watching that area for weeks. You saw something, didn't you?" Jack hesitated. A truck. 2 men. Military type, but not. Local. Linda nodded grimly. "That matches what we've been tracking. There's a group smuggling weapons and narcotics through these woods. High-grade stuff. We've been ordered to hold back because they're protected by hired guns, ex-mercenaries. My people aren't trained for that kind of fight." She looked at him directly. "You are." Jack turned away, staring into the fire. "I'm done with that life, Linda. I didn't come back here to fight someone else's war." "I know," she said quietly. "But these men are dangerous. If they dig in up there, it won't just be the cops in danger. It'll be the town." For a long time, the only sound was the crackling of wood. Rex shifted beside the fireplace, watching both of them. Linda reached into her coat and placed a small file on the table. Surveillance photos, maps, timestamps. "Just take a look," she said softly. "You don't owe anyone anything, but I can't stand by and watch my people walk into something they're not ready for." Jack glanced through the images. The faces in the photos were cold, disciplined, mercenaries, no doubt. He recognized the way they held their weapons, the spacing of their camp. Whoever was leading them knew exactly what he was doing. Jack's throat tightened as he saw one detail: a military insignia carved on a crate, the same emblem used by a private security unit he'd once crossed paths with overseas. He said nothing, but Linda saw his expression change. "You've seen them before, haven't you?" she asked quietly. Jack didn't answer. The firelight flickered across his face, casting shadows that made him look older, more haunted. "I'll think about it," he finally said. Linda nodded. "That's all I ask. Just think about it." She slipped her hat back on, opened the door, and paused. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're back, Jack. The town could use someone like you." Then she was gone, the sound of her truck fading down the mountain road. Jack stood there for a long while, the cold wind slipping through the doorway. Rex rested his head on Jack's knee, sensing his unease. "What do you think, boy?" Jack murmured. "Maybe peace doesn't come that easy, huh?" Rex gave a low, thoughtful whine. Outside, the mist thickened again, curling through the trees like ghosts of the past. The following day dawned gray and heavy, clouds pressing low over the forest, as if warning that change was coming. Jack hadn't slept much. He spent the night replaying the conversation with Linda in his head, the look in her eyes when she said, "You're the only one who can help." For hours, he tried to push the thought away, but by morning, his mind was made up. He packed a small duffel, loaded Rex into the truck, and drove toward town. The sheriff's office sat on the edge of Clearwater, a squat brick building that looked older than most of the people working inside. When Jack entered, heads turned, some in respect, others in curiosity. He hadn't been in uniform for years, but his bearing still carried authority. Linda met him near the operations room, holding a folder thick with maps and notes. She looked relieved, but didn't smile. "Didn't think you'd actually show," she said. Jack shrugged. "Didn't think I would either." Inside the operations room stood 3 other officers. The first was Deputy Mark Willis, a broad-shouldered man in his early 40s with close-cropped blonde hair and a trimmed beard that couldn't quite hide an old scar running down his cheek. Mark had served in the Army before joining law enforcement, his calm voice and steady aim earning him respect among his peers. Standing next to him was Officer Jamie Torres, a young Latina woman barely in her late 20s, slim and wiry, with expressive brown eyes and jet-black hair tied into a tight ponytail. She moved quickly, always writing or checking details on her tablet, someone who hated wasting time. The last was Tom Weaver, a rookie in his early 20s, freckle-faced and eager, wearing his uniform like it was too big for him. His enthusiasm was obvious, but so was his inexperience. Every few minutes he adjusted his belt or touched the brim of his hat, a nervous habit. Linda laid out the map on the table. "The smugglers are holed up here," she said, pointing to a clearing deep inside the forest, accessible only through one narrow logging road. "They have a watch post here and another here. The main camp has about a dozen men, armed, trained, maybe ex-contractors. We've been observing them for weeks but can't get close without tipping them off." Jack leaned over the table, studying the terrain. "They'll have scouts along the ridge, possibly motion sensors too. Any drones?" Jamie nodded. "One, but it's cheap. Battery dies in 15 minutes. Jack frowned. "That won't cut it." He began sketching on the map with a pencil. "We'll need 2 teams. Team 1 approaches from the North Ridge. Team 2 circles east to cut off their retreat route. We'll move at dusk. Light low enough for concealment, but bright enough to read movement. Rex and I will go ahead to sweep for tripwires or mines." Mark folded his arms, skeptical. "You sure your dog still got it? It's been years since Afghanistan." Jack met, his gaze evenly. He never forgot. As if on cue, Rex, who had been lying near the door, lifted his head and gave a sharp bark, tail stiff with alertness. The tension broke. Jamie grinned. "Guess that answers the question." The rest of the afternoon was spent preparing. Jack ran the team through mock drills outside the station, signals, hand gestures, and movement coordination. Though he wasn't officially in command, everyone naturally looked to him for direction. Linda watched from the sidelines, arms crossed, admiration hidden behind professionalism. "He's something else," Jamie murmured beside her. Linda nodded. "He always was." As the sun began to sink, painting the clouds orange and purple, they gathered outside the station. Jack checked his gear, the old combat instincts returning as easily as breathing. Linda approached him quietly. "You don't have to do this, she said. Jack smiled faintly. "I think I do. I owe this place that much." She hesitated, then reached into her pocket, handing him a small silver badge. "Take this. It's temporary. Consultant, technically. Helps if anyone asks questions." Jack accepted it with a nod, tucking it into his jacket. By the time they reached the forest, the light was fading, the smell of pine mixed with the metallic scent of cold air. Rex moved ahead, nose to the ground, tail swaying low and deliberate. He stopped suddenly, paw raised, sign of a wire. Jack knelt, tracing a nearly invisible tripwire hidden under the leaves. He disarmed it quietly, glancing back at the others. "They're more organized than we thought," he whispered. "We'll proceed on foot from here." They moved like shadows through the trees, every step deliberate. The forest grew darker, the wind whispering through branches. From a distance, faint voices carried through the night. The smugglers, unaware of the storm closing in. Jack crouched behind a rock, signaling for silence. Through his binoculars, he could see their camp. Tents, crates, a small generator humming softly. He counted 12 men, maybe more. He turned to Linda and whispered, "We'll hit them tomorrow at dawn. Tonight, we observe." Rex lay beside him, eyes glinting in the dark, perfectly still. Jack placed a hand on his fur, feeling the steady rhythm of the dog's breathing. It reminded him of Afghanistan, the night before every mission, that calm before chaos. For the first time in years, he felt something like purpose returning. The forest was swallowed by darkness, the moon veiled behind a curtain of fog. The temperature had dropped sharply, and the air was thick with tension. Jack crouched behind a fallen log, scanning the enemy camp through his night vision scope. Around him, the officers from Clearwater's sheriff department waited in silence, faces half hidden under helmets and paint. Rex was by his side, muscles coiled, eyes glowing faintly in the green haze of the lens. He could sense what was coming. Every breath, every sound sharpened. Jack turned toward Linda, who stood a few feet away, whispering orders to her team. Her expression was calm, though her knuckles were white from gripping the radio. Beside her, Mark adjusted his rifle, eyes focused and steady, a man at home in danger. Jamie crouched nearby, her fingers tightening around the trigger of her sidearm, breathing in short, controlled bursts. Tom, the rookie, was trembling slightly, but tried to hide it, his youthful face pale under the low light. Jack gave him a small nod. "Stick close to Jamie, follow her lead," he whispered. Tom nodded wordlessly, grateful for the reassurance. Through the scope, Jack saw movement at the camp. A guard lit a cigarette, the faint glow illuminating his unshaven face. Mid-30s, muscular, with tattoos crawling up his neck. Jack watched him lazily pace along the perimeter. 2 more men emerged from a tent, checking rifles, laughing quietly. "That's our opening," Jack murmured. "Team 1, north side. Team 2, flank from east. Move on my signal." Rex tensed as Jack gave a low whistle, the one sound only he could recognize. The teams slipped forward, silent as shadows. Branches snapped faintly under boots, but the wind masked the noise. They were within 50 yards when the first floodlight suddenly flared to life. "Contact!" someone shouted in the camp. Gunfire erupted, cutting through the night like thunder. The officers dove for cover as bullets tore through the trees. Jack rolled behind a rock, returning fire with precision, each shot deliberate. Rex darted ahead, circling the perimeter, barking once, his signal for movement to the right. Jack turned, saw a gunman sneaking through the brush, and took him down with a single round. The scene exploded into chaos. Shouts, flashes, the metallic ring of spent shells hitting frozen ground. Mark's voice came over the radio. "Left side secured!" Jamie and Tom advanced from the east, using the smoke from flashbangs as cover. Tom stumbled as a bullet grazed his shoulder, crying out, but Jamie pulled him behind a log. "You're fine, rookie! Stay low!" she yelled. Despite the pain, Tom reloaded, shaking but determined. Linda's voice broke through, calm but commanding. "Push forward! We've got them boxed in!" At the center of the camp, one of the smugglers, taller, older, his head shaved clean and a jagged scar over his eye, grabbed a rifle and shouted orders in a foreign accent. He was clearly the leader. He fired at Linda's position, forcing her to duck. Jack saw it and moved instinctively. "Cover me!" he barked to Mark, sprinting across open ground as rounds whistled past. He slid behind a crate just as an explosion shook the air. The generator had caught fire. Rex lunged toward the smoke, ignoring the chaos. Through the haze, he saw one of the mercenaries aiming at Jack's back. The dog leaped, jaws locking around the man's arm, dragging him down before he could shoot. Jack turned, fired once, ending the threat. "Good boy," he shouted over the noise. But before he could breathe, a loud crack echoed. A support beam from one of the metal sheds collapsed, trapping Tom beneath it. "Tom's down!" Jamie screamed. Jack sprinted toward the sound, bullets striking the dirt near his boots. He dropped his rifle, using sheer strength to lift the bent steel frame. Tom's face was bloodied, eyes wide with pain but still conscious. "I've got you," Jack grunted, pulling him free as Jamie and Mark provided cover fire. The battle was nearly over now. The smugglers were retreating, disoriented, surrounded. Moments later, the gunfire ceased. Smoke drifted between the trees, glowing orange from the fires still burning in the camp. Linda gave the order to stand down. Her voice cracked slightly, not from fear but from relief. Officers moved quickly, cuffing the wounded and securing the weapons cache. Rex limped back to Jack's side, his fur singed but his eyes bright. Jack knelt, patting his neck. "You did good, soldier." As dawn broke, the forest returned to silence. The rising sun painted the mist gold, casting long shadows over the battlefield. Linda walked up beside Jack, brushing dirt from her jacket. "We did it," she said softly. Jack looked around at the wreckage, the smoke, the frozen ground stained with mud and ashes. "You did it," he corrected. "I just helped." Linda gave a faint smile. "You always sell yourself short." Rex barked once, the sound echoing through the trees. The storm was over. The forest, scarred but still standing, was peaceful again. A week later, the snow had melted from the branches, and the air in Clearwater carried the clean scent of pine and victory. The once sleepy town now buzzed with cautious pride. People spoke of the raid in hushed admiration, though few knew the full story. Inside the town hall, the sheriff's department had gathered for a small ceremony. Flags hung from the walls, and the morning light spilled through tall windows, catching the polished badges of the officers who stood in their dress uniforms. Jack stood near the back, uncomfortable in a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit. He wasn't used to being indoors, surrounded by applause. Beside him, Rex sat obediently, wearing a new collar with a small silver tag engraved "Hero of Clearwater." The dog's ears flicked back at the sound of clapping, but his calm eyes stayed on Jack, as if understanding this wasn't a battlefield, just another kind of noise. At the front, Sheriff Linda Carter took the podium. The bruises on her jaw from the night of the fight had faded, though her voice carried the gravel of exhaustion. She looked more composed than ever, hair tied neatly, uniform pressed, but her expression softened when she glanced toward Jack. "Sometimes," she said, "heroes don't wear uniforms. They don't ask for recognition. They simply do what needs to be done, and then disappear quietly." Today, Clearwater owes its peace to one of those men. The crowd erupted in applause as Linda gestured toward Jack. He gave a polite nod, hands in his pockets, the corner of his mouth lifting just slightly. He hated attention, but even he couldn't deny the warmth that spread through the room. After the speeches ended, Linda approached him with a smile that mixed pride and a hint of persuasion. "Jack Miller, on behalf of this town and the Sheriff's Department, we'd like to offer you a permanent position, security advisor. Your tactics saved lives. We could use a mind like yours around here." Jack looked at her for a long moment. The room quieted, sensing his hesitation. He finally said, his voice low but steady, "Linda, I appreciate it, but I didn't come back here to lead another fight. I came back to live." Linda's smile faltered slightly, but she understood. "You can't blame me for trying." He chuckled softly. "Wouldn't expect any less from you." From the crowd, Deputy Mark Willis approached, his arm in a sling but grin wide. "You sure about that, Marine? The job comes with free coffee and a badge." Jack shook his head, amused. "Last time someone gave me a badge, I ended up crawling through mud and bullets. Think I'll pass." Mark laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Suit yourself. Just know we've got your back if you ever need us." Behind him, Officer Jamie Torres smiled, holding a box with Rex's new tag inside. "For your partner," she said. "He earned it as much as anyone." Rex sniffed her hand before wagging his tail once, a rare gesture of approval. Standing slightly apart from the others was Tom Weaver, the young rookie Jack had pulled from the wreckage. His arm was still in a sling, but his face was brighter than before, no longer filled with uncertainty. He walked up slowly, voice quiet but sincere. "I just wanted to say, thank you. You didn't have to save me." Jack looked him over, noting the bandage and the steadiness that hadn't been there before. "You'll do fine, kid," Jack said. "Just remember, it's not about being fearless. It's about moving forward anyway." Later that evening, as the crowd dispersed and the town returned to its quiet rhythm, Jack drove back to his cabin. The gravel road wound through trees heavy with melting frost. The lake shimmered faintly under the setting sun. He parked by the porch, stepped out, and stretched, breathing in the cold, clean air that smelled of smoke and pine. Rex bounded out behind him, tail wagging, circling once before settling near the steps. Jack lit the fireplace, the flicker of flame painting warm gold on the wooden walls. He poured 2 cups of coffee, one for himself, one poured into a metal bowl for Rex. The dog lapped it up, tail thumping softly against the floor. Jack chuckled. "You and your taste for the strong stuff." He walked outside and sat on the porch, the steam from his mug rising into the crisp morning. Across the lake, the first rays of dawn painted the water in hues of orange and pink. It was quiet again, but not the heavy silence of isolation. This one felt peaceful, alive. Rex lay beside him, head resting on his paws, eyes following the drifting mist above the trees. Jack stared at the horizon and spoke softly, his voice carrying the calm certainty of a man who had finally made peace with himself. "Not everyone who carries wounds needs to keep fighting," he murmured. "Sometimes they just need a place to rest." Rex's ears twitched at the sound, and he pressed his head against Jack's knee. Together, they watched the sunrise spread over the lake, the light growing stronger, warmer, until the last traces of night disappeared. The war within him had ended. What remained was the quiet, steady rhythm of life, the promise of a new dawn. Sometimes, God's greatest miracles aren't the storms he stops, but the strength he gives us to walk through them. Jack's story reminds us that even when life leaves scars, healing begins the moment we open our hearts to peace. It may come in silence, in loyalty, or through the unconditional love of a faithful companion like Rex. In our daily lives, we all carry invisible battles, but through faith, courage, and compassion, God can turn our deepest wounds into light for others. So if this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it. Maybe someone out there needs a reminder that they are not alone. Leave a comment to tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe for more inspiring stories. And may God bless you and your loved ones with peace, strength, and hope every single day.